You see, something's going to happen.
What? What's going to happen?
Something wonderful.
What?
I understand how you feel. You see, it's all very clear to me now.
Welcome to the Occult Rejects. On today's episode, I got myself, and I got Megan back from 7 Degrees of Wisdom. It's been a while since she's been on. For all the old listeners, she was on the Tarot series, and you did the couple of emblems with us. You were on a couple other things recently. Yeah. I'm trying to remember. Michael Meyer. Michael Meyer and Hildegard.
Favorite things to do.
Yeah, those were good, and the Grimoires.
And the Land of Fusions. We did the Arbitel, all that stuff. It was fun.
I was actually talking to Jin today. I was telling him that I was doing a show with you, and he was like, "Oh my God!" He's like, "I gotta hit her up." He's like, "I had so much fun with the Grimoires," and I said, "Yeah." I was like, "She does a good job on those," and I had fun when we did them too.
Yeah, that was fun. Well, thanks for having me back on, man. I appreciate it.
Oh, of course. For all the I guess people have a lot of new listeners just from the last few months. For the people who don't know who you are, do you want to at least plug your stuff and let them know where they can find some of your work?
Yeah, guys. So I have my own YouTube channel. It's at 7 Degrees of Wisdom 81. I have a bunch of eclectic different things on there: occult, paranormal, magic. All kinds of different metaphysical, spiritual stuff if you guys are interested in that. But all in all, I'm just a mystic and a spiritual seeker.
Awesome. Yes, and I think I probably have your stuff included in the links now. If not, I'll add it after the show. Sometimes I do forget prior to the show. Today we're going to get into, and I do find this to be a very interesting situation or thing to talk about when it comes to the paranormal. People have heard me say it before. Maybe a while ago when I used to cover paranormal more, but recently, for the new listeners that they may not know, for me, a lot of the paranormal I do think is almost kind of the proof of magic in a sense, and I do think that some of the toys or the equipment that's used by ghost hunters, I do think can also possibly show magic in a sense as well, or something very close to it. And there's things that I do. My opinion, and it's something we'll get into at some point in this show. I also do believe that it's quite possible hauntings and poltergeists might be created by the person themselves due to having maybe certain powers or, magical abilities that they don't even realize. And I do think some of it could be actual psychic attacks, which is, something we'll be talking about in this. When 7 Degrees hit me up, when Megan hit me up, she had mentioned, Dion Fortune's book, Psychic Attacks. And I read that book myself. I thought it was a really good book. I thought it was really interesting. I think Dion Fortune's work, regardless of who she is or what she was associated with, I think she has some valuable stuff to read. So I know Megan's big into that too, and she hit me up about this, and I said, yeah, let's do it. I guess really, if you want to, Megan, what got you into actually really kind of being interested in this and wanting to talk about it?
So,
besides being a Dion Fortune fan,
yeah. So I'm a paranormal investigator too. I do that on the side. I've always been into the paranormal. I've always had experiences since I was a kid. I have various different abilities, all kinds of stuff. So actually, I had this book on my shelf for years, and I had thumbed through it. I really didn't want to read it until I had an experience. Through my occult studies over the years, I was like, I wonder what is happening is some kind of a psychic attack. And for those of you guys don't know, the occult, magic, ceremonial magic, all that stuff, it all ties together with the paranormal, and it all kind of feeds off each other. And I think by the end of the show, you guys will kind of understand how that is and why that happens. So I had actually had an experience where a student of mine tried to psychic attack me. And I realized exactly what had been going on through my studies. And, of course, I stopped it immediately. And there was some other things that had happened to me where I was kind of in a really bad headspace. I had a lot of stuff going on in my life. And I actually created a thought form in my environment that my family started to see. My daughter seen it, my husband. It was even at my mom's house. So it actually started to create its own like paranormal activity where there was no previous paranormal activity in the houses of my family. And I was sitting there with my friend and who is a psychic medium, and he was like, "Hey, what is that?" And it was apparently tethered to me, like next to me, and I wasn't aware of it because I was in a really bad mental space at the time. And so we're going to be talking about thought forms and talking about Dion Fortune's experience with this. And so once I realized what was going on, I was able to integrate it back in. So basically, when you have like psychic abilities, telekinetic abilities, and telepathic abilities, you're able to create thought forms. And these thought forms also get created through ceremonial magic or people with psychic abilities in general. And these actually cause a lot of paranormal activity. Wow. And so the paranormal is my first love. It always has been. And so
I think that's what kind of really got me into a lot of this stuff too, was being so open to the paranormal, and that's due to my parents, honestly, with that.
Right, and like trying to figure out like why all this stuff is happening, and the further along you get on, learning about the occult and learning about ceremonial magic and all this stuff, you start to understand it on a really deep level.
Well, you know what? So, just not to interrupt, but like even. I think like if you're into that as a child, but you also believe not so much religion, but believe in God, I feel like if you really do believe into that stuff, that's going to make you not so much deny religion or spirituality. It's just going to make you question and look deeper, because you're going to be like, how does this make sense considering what we're told to believe?
Right, it turns us into seekers.
Yeah. I was just going to say, I wonder if in a sense that already gets you into seeking. It's an interesting way. Yes. That just popped into my head now.
And it's helped me understand the paranormal on such a deep level that, even 10, 15 years ago, I didn't really even understand at the time. When you're a scared kid seeing ghosts in your room, and you don't know what's going on, it's a pretty scary thing. And so if you guys are wanting to know more about paranormal entities and the paranormal and see some investigations I've done, you guys can check out my channel, my YouTube channel. But basically, that's how I got into this book and wanted to talk about this book. I've wanted to talk about this for a couple of months now, so that people can understand like how much the outside world, entities, marketing, everything that we consume and see on a daily basis can be a form of psychic attack and can control us and all kinds of different things. So this all ties in to all of that. So I went ahead and shared my PowerPoint there, Nick, if you want to add that up there. So I'll just kind of dive right in. So I'm going to start talking about Dion Fortune, who she was. I'm sure a lot of you already know who she is, but there's a lot of people that don't know her backstory. So let's just go ahead and get started. So Dion Fortune, her birth name is Violet Mary Firth. She was born in 1891 and died in 1946. So she was around the time Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn was founded. Same time around Crowley, Mathers. So she was in that kind of era with all of them. So the magical name of Violet Mary Firth, British occultist and author whose books continue to have an impact on modern witchcraft and paganism. So she's pretty much laid the foundation for, modern witchcraft and modern magic and even paganism. She's written a lot of books, fiction and nonfiction, and this one happens to be nonfiction. Okay, so she's considered one of the leading occultists of her time. Dion Fortune was an adept in the ceremonial magic and was perhaps one of the first occult writers to approach magic and hermetic concepts from the psychology of Jung and Freud. Some contemporary witches and pagans consider her fiction more important than her nonfiction, for her novels contain pagan themes and are a rich and source of rituals.
Something I just wanted. Do you think? So Dion Fortune wasn't her real name, right?
No, it's Violet Mary Firth was her name, and I'm going to talk about how she got her magical name here.
It's just I'm not saying it's the same thing with her. I just find it interesting. I didn't realize the date that she died. I mean, Crowley died in 47, and I question that highly. You know, because he was also, in my opinion, I mean, I think it's almost kind of proof that he was secrets. You know, he was intelligence. Aleister Crowley was not his real name. Of course, maybe it's his magical name, or is that his intelligence name? And did that character just die off and he really didn't?
It's possible.
Yeah, so I'm not saying that that's Dion Fortune, but considering she died right near him, and I just, for me, in my opinion, so many things popped off after 1947 that seems very occult related. I wonder, like, was Crowley still behind it anyway, and he's not dead?
Yeah, there's so much that could have happened that we have no idea on. But the things that we need to understand about all of these guys that we're talking about is they were influenced by Renaissance era occultism and studying the books and translating them and practicing everything. And so these guys were like the revival of all of the ancient knowledge. And so modern occultists, us now, me and Nick and everybody else who's practicing magic now, these guys are our heroes along with the other people too. So it's kind of come on down the line. But I just kind of wanted to make that point that that's where the connections get made, is like, you know, they kind of brought this back into a revival, and then a lot of them died off in the 40s. Right. Okay. So I'll keep talking a little bit about her. So, you know, you're good. You're good. So Fortune was born into a family of Christian scientists and displayed mediumistic abilities in her teen years. In her early 20s, she worked as a law analyst at a medico-psychological clinic in London. Her interest in exploring the human psyche resulted from an unpleasant episode in 1911 when, at the age 29, she went to work in a school for a principal who took a great personal dislike to her. When Fortune went to see the woman to announce she was leaving her job, she was subjected to an invective that she had no self-confidence and was incompetent. Well, we've all had that happen at some point or another. Fortune said later that the principal also conveyed this by psychic attack using yogic techniques and hypnotism that left Fortune a, quote, mental and physical wreck for 3 years. As a result, she studied psychology, delving into the works of both Freud and Jung. She preferred the ideas of Jung, but eventually concluded that neither Freud nor Jung adequately addressed the subtleties and the complexities of the mind. The answers, Fortune felt, lay in occultism. So that's what turned her to the occult world, was this experience that she had. In 1919, Fortune joined the Alpha and Omega Lodge at the Stella Matutina, an outer order of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, and studied under J.W. Brodie Innes. She experienced clashes with the wife of MacGregor Mathers, one of the founders of the Golden Dawn, which she again felt were forms of psychic attack. So she even felt psychic attack from Mathers' wife. So she left.
Supposedly Mathers and Crowley was having a magical battle out in the streets.
Yep, that too. Yep. So she left Stella Matutina in 1924 and founded her own order, the community, later the Fraternity of the Interlight. The order initially was part of the Golden Dawn, but later separated from it. Fortune worked as a psychiatrist, which brought her into contact with other cases of psychic attack. And that's what the book is about. She's talking about all of her different cases of psychic attack that she helped people with. She was a prolific writer, pouring her occult knowledge into both novels and nonfiction. Her pen name was derived from the magical motto she adopted upon joining Stella Matutina, Dio non fortuna, by God, not chance, which became shortened to Dion Fortune. Her books are considered classics and continue to be enjoyed and widely read. For a time, she lived in Glastonbury and became deeply interested in the Arthurian legends and magical mystical lore centered there. She wrote about Glastonbury and Avalon of the Heart. Fortune used her experiences with psychic attack to conclude that hostile psychic energies can emanate both deliberately and unwittingly from certain people, and that one could mentally fend off such energy. Her book, Psychic Self-Defense from 1930, remained the best guide to detection and defense against psychic attack. One of her most famous books is The Mystical Kabbalah in 1936, in which she discusses the Western esoteric tradition and how the Kabbalah is used by modern students of the mysteries. The true nature of the god, she said, is that of magical images shaped out of the astral plane by mankind's thought and is influenced by the mind. Her other major nonfiction works include The Sane Occultism in 1929, The Training in the Work of the Initiate 1930, Through the Gates of Death 1932, Applied Magic, Aspects of Occultism.
I read that one.
And Spiritualism and the Light of the Occult Science. Machinery of the Mind 1922 is published under her given name, but it is her novels that have captured most interest among modern witches and pagans. In particular, The Goat-Faced God, 1936, concerns the powers of Pan, the horn god, and offers a wealth of details on lays. The Sea Priestess concerns the power of Isis, the moon goddess, and has been used by modern witches as an inspiration for creating rituals and invocations. So she herself became a thought form, and her methods were used in rituals that are used today by a lot of different people. So there you go, creating an egregore. Her other novels are The Secrets of Dr. Treverner, about the adept who runs an occult nursing home, The Demon Lover, 1927, The Winged Bull, 1936. Fortune was married to Dr. Thomas Penry Evans. She died in January 1946. The Fraternity of the Inner Light remains based in London and is now known as the Society of the Inner Light. It offers techniques in Western esoteric tradition. The society stresses that Fortune was not a witch and that she was not involved with any coven, and that the society is not connected with witchcraft in any way.
That's interesting. You know, the Astrum Argentum is even associated with London. So, I know there was one that I was interested in joining, and you actually had to mail a letter to it to request response back to find out how to join, and you had to send it to London. But then the weird thing is I knew people that were in it, and when they started going for initiations, they were going to Italy. So I mean,
really?
I find that I find that interesting. It's something else that you mentioned. We're already kind of far from it, and I don't mean to screw up the flow here, but you had mentioned before that these people were inspired by Renaissance people. Mm-hmm. I think you're totally correct, and I think even for Crowley, and me and Lisa are going to be covering this person eventually, but even with Crowley, I swear there's stuff that he's, I don't want to say rip off, but either rebranding or inspired by. From 500 BC, I think, at least. Yes. I think a lot of people, and I don't know if this is maybe more the conspiracy community, because unfortunately I'm probably exposed to that more. It seems like all of a sudden, I guess maybe previous to John Dee, nobody else exists. That's as far back as we'll go. And it's those John Dee, Elvis Levi, Crowley, and all these new neo magicians, I'd still call them, they're still fairly new, were inspired by people from hundreds and hundreds of years ago.
Yes.
They exist, and nobody just reads their shit.
All this goes back to ancient Sumeria. If you really want to dig deep on all of this, start studying ancient Sumeria. I mean, that's where this all comes from. Rosicrucian teachings tell you this. It even goes back farther than that.
You know what sucks? He was getting into Babylonian and Sumerian stuff before he kicked off. Or disappeared. I would have loved to actually seen I hate to say it, Crowley actually kind of start, pecking away at that, saying, this is what I think's going on, because he was starting to get highly interested in that, before he stopped or died.
Yes. If you want to really start from the beginning, start studying ancient Sumeria, the Persians, the Akkadians, Zoroastrianism, and it's all based on astrology. All major religions are based on astrology. So she was an expert on psychic attacks. She became an expert through her own experience, which she described in her book, the one we're speaking about. As a young working woman in her 20s, she was subjected to mind manipulation by her female boss, who Fortune said attempted to break her will. Fortune departed her job mentally shattered and physically exhausted. It took her 3 years to recover. As a result, Fortune became interested in occultism in an attempt to understand what had happened to her and to defend herself against the future such attacks. Her research led her to conclude that damage had been sustained to her etheric double. Okay, So when you're working with ceremonial magic, you're not only working with your physical body, you're working with your etheric body or your subtle body, which has 7 layers. And so psychic attack, if it's weak, that's how people can kind of get in. Okay. So that's why, practicing ritual, being on a spiritual path, all of those things is really, really important, because you're strengthening your subtle body so that these type of things can't affect you. And you can take this as far as you want to go, with this, shielding yourself from any kind of psychic attacks that may be coming at you. Her research led her to conclude that damage had been done to her double, a non-physical replica of the body, which is attached to it and helps channel the universal life force into it.
Yo, do you ever see like that copper meshing you can buy? I forgot there's a certain word for it. I actually, at one point, I used to have I wear wool hats sometimes. I actually thought I was being fucked with by somebody. I was wrapping the inside of the wool hat with that shit, and I put it on my head.
Hey.
Faraday cloth or whatever they call.
Hey,
I used to have that shit around my microphone and stuff too, because believe it or not, this equipment gives off a lot of EMF.
People have no idea what we're being bombarded with, and even today, it is 100 times worse than it used to be even 50 years ago. Okay, we're being bombarded constantly. We're constantly being sold to. We're constantly being marketed to. We're constantly coming in contact with people every day that affect us, and people really don't realize that. And I think that's the problem with a lot of people today. Because I mentor people, and they come to me, and their lives are freaking out of control. And it's like, well, you need to take it down back to the basics, like. When you're in a weakened state, that's when you're more susceptible to this stuff. And then if you don't even realize it, it makes you more susceptible. I'm not trying to scare the crap out of people. This is not what I'm doing. This is not like some fear tactic that I'm saying, oh my God, you need to go out there and protect yourself from hexes, jinxes, and curses.
And only I could tell you how to do that for $50 a month.
Right. But yeah, so.
And there's always going to be an issue. It's never going to get better.
Exactly. But that's another reason why I wanted to do this was awareness. The real power that you have is in awareness of your own thoughts, awareness of your own triggers, awareness of things that are affecting you on your physical level, your mental level, your emotional level, and your etheric level. It's very, very important. Okay, so psychic attack remained her focal point throughout her entire life, and especially through her magical career. She worked as a psychiatrist and attributed many of the symptoms and cases she saw to psychic attacks. In 1919, she took initiation to the Alpha et Omega Order, an outer order of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, which had splintered into various groups. The Alpha et Omega Lodge was created by Samuel Liddell McGregor Mathers, one of the original founders of the Golden Dawn, and his wife, Moina Mathers. So Fortune took as her magical motto, Dio non fortuna, by God, not chance. She was a talented magician. She participated in psychic warfare and believed that the Moina attack, they talk about the Moina attack. She was like this high priestess of this high order. She actually defeated her on the astral realm. She talks about it in the book, and attacked her physically, etherically, mentally, and emotionally. So she had numerous dramatic magical experiences, including materializing a thought form from her own body, in the form of a werewolf. Okay, so when I read this, I was like, ding, ding, ding. Okay,
you think that happens? I'm not denying.
Yes.
You know what kind of, imagine, I'm just going to keep it real. Maybe some people wouldn't get that surprise, but I think if I was able to do that, I'd probably be scared shitting out of the werewolf that I actually made that happen. I would think that would just be how that itself, I think, would blow my mind away. Wow, there's a werewolf here now. How the fuck did I do that?
Yeah,
that's that's going to erase everything that you've thought about life and reality. Once you do something like that.
What you do, and what I had to do when I had my experience and I had something, come out, I had to reintegrate it back in.
That was my example with the candle. That fucked my head up for a bit, because I was like, how the fuck is that possible? A werewolf, a wolf or something?
Yeah, and it's all coming from the subconscious mind.
I would have left the house.
The part of the mind that we're not aware of. right? It all comes from the subconscious mind, our past experiences, our, what we've learned, all of these things. So when that happened, the materialization happened spontaneously one night, and Fortune later concluded that it was a byproduct of her hateful thought about revenge against a person. The werewolf seemed to emerge from the solar plexus area of her auric field. At first, Fortune thought she could control the thought form of her own will, but her magical teacher advised her to reabsorb the thought form before it went out of control. So she lived with a group of people that was actually like members. They were all adepts, and they would go around. People would come to them for help for stuff like this, and then she would be, the one that would go and help them. Okay, so then she, okay, let me read here. Nonfiction. I think I'm getting some doubles here. Fortune authored a number of fiction and nonfiction books about the occult. Psychic self-defense is considered the definitive work on psychic attack and psychic vampirism. So that's another thing that can affect you as well. She was married to Henry Heavens, who's a doctor, died in 1946. Okay, so I think I got some doubles in there. Okay, so I want to talk about thought forms now. Okay. So a lot of occult orders, when they are working together on a common goal, they will create a thought form in their surroundings in the temple, and then they will all pull from this to either amplify their abilities or amplify what they're working on. But left unchecked, it's kind of it's a slippery slope to mess with this stuff, especially if you've got people that are in it for their ego and all different types of things. These things can actually cause harm, but they are meant for good. And then later on, I'm going to talk about egregores and then PK manifestations and kind of wrap all this up and tie all this together. Okay, so what is a thought form? So a thought form describes the concept of an entity created directly and exclusively by the mind, whether unconsciously or consciously. And this is what's wrong with the world today. A lot of people are going around creating this shit unconsciously. They're completely aware of what they're doing.
So like every time I imagine like this little gnome stealing my sock in the laundry, like is that eventually going to come to life because I thought about him enough?
It could.
It's like, well, it wasn't from him, but now it is.
I know it sounds crazy to the average lay, right? Or to the muggles. But, I mean, this stuff is like the real deal. Like, this stuff really does happen. Your mind is the most powerful thing that you have.
I think so.
So, which appears to develop a life of its own as an independent agent in the real world, perceptible to other people. Okay, so we actually every time we think about something and we focus on it, we create a thought form in it. And so when we create this thought form, it can actually take a life of its own, which ties into the next thing I'm going to be talking about.
To be totally honest with you, if you or me were to think of something and get a visual in our head, it took off in a life of its own already just in our mind.
Yes.
It exists literally.
And that will lead into parallel dimensions, and every decision you make splitting off into a parallel dimension and going down that road. I mean, that's a whole nother show in itself. But every time you make a decision, there's another version of you that made the other decision that's living out that life. And it's all happening all at once. Because you got to remember, there are 3 levels to the astral realm. You have the lower astral, the middle astral, and the higher astral. And there's 15 planes, different planes on the earth plane that we're going in and out of all the time. So that's how entities come in and out. We are constantly interacting with these all the time. Okay, so egregores. In magical and occult traditions, it is typically seen as having an independent existence, but in other kinds of esotericism, it is merely the collective mind of a religious community, either esoteric or exoteric. In the latter sense, as a collective mind, the term collective entity, referred to by Rene Guignon, is synonymous with egregore.
Did you ever use an egregore?
Maybe.
Maybe. Maybe I did too. I don't know.
Yeah. Okay. Nice. So here's a little further information.
I heard they work.
They do. Well, all major religions are egregores. Saints are egregores. Hell, a Ouija board is an egregore. Slender Man.
Technically, yeah. Kind of.
Anything that we can create. And if they're not continually fed, that's why, like, you could even say, like, the old gods, they've kind of, like, died off a little bit, is because they're not getting fed as much as they used to during, like, Roman and Egyptian times.
You know, this is another thing, again, it kind of almost even goes back to what I was saying about Crowley, and I'll even throw in, like, I've even mentioned this with Elon Musk. What if we're just feeding an egregore? Because, again, that's probably not their real name.
We are.
And all the time, every time we're bringing them up, typing them, cucking for them,
Yes.
Idolizing them.
You're
we could be
absolutely right.
feeding something completely different than that person, actually.
You're absolutely correct.
Yeah. Exactly. And again, to get at what I was saying, if you ignored Elon Musk and other annoying people, you'd end up killing a god. Thank you, Lisa. How do you kill a god? You ignore their existence.
Pretty much.
Because then they have no power anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's how PK manifestations get dissipated as well. Okay, so a little bit more on an egregore. It's an esoteric concept that represents a non-physical entity that arises from the collective thoughts of a distinct group of people. The term egregore comes from the French word egregore, which is derived from the ancient Greek word egregoros, meaning wakeful. It is believed that an egregore is created when a group of people come together with a common purpose or intention, and their collective thoughts and emotions give rise to a powerful autonomous entity. Okay, so the more you pour in, the more you will get. Okay. It's often seen as a kind of group consciousness in the occult world, similar to a zeitgeist or an archetype. It is said to have the power to influence the thoughts, emotions, and actions of the individuals who make up the group that created it. Okay, so egregores can be created both intentionally and unintentionally, and they can be positive or negative in nature depending on the beliefs and intentions of the group that gave rise to them. The concept of egregore has been explored in various spiritual and mystical traditions, including Hermeticism, Theosophy, and chaos magic. Chaos magicians are huge on this. It's the basis of their whole practice, really.
I want to ask you an opinion on that. Chaos doesn't that seem almost like, isn't chaos magic in itself? I've always thought, like, aren't you kind of like, isn't that like repeating yourself, just using different terms? Like, I'm not trying to be a dick. It's just when I hear people say,
No.
I mean, I say it myself, but it's like, isn't that kind of saying magic?
Yes. Well, in Libernal and the Psychonaut, they call the word they gave for the etheric is chaos. So they just gave it a new name.
Yeah.
So what they're talking about is etheric energy or astral energy, and they just started calling it chaos. So it's actually just they just switched the words out. But it comes, so they're using the chaos of the environment around them to create magic. So it's like, yeah, technically you could think of it that way.
Well,
There's magic all around us.
I would consider the abyss
it.
chaos in a sense anyway.
Yeah.
Because there's less form, there's less structure, so people would see that as chaos.
Yeah. Yeah. So some practitioners believe that egregores can be consciously created and utilized for specific purposes, such as healing, protection, or manifestation. Others caution that egregores can be dangerous if not properly understood or controlled, as they can take on a life of their own and become difficult to manage. And this is very, very true. And this has been happening for quite some time. All you need to do is just look. So egregores play a popular role in myth and urban legends. One such legend is that of the tulpa, a concept originating from Tibetan Buddhism that refers to a thought form created through meditation and visualization. According to the legend, a tulpa can become so powerful that it takes on a life of its own, existing independently of the creator. Another example of the urban legend is Slender Man, a tall, thin, faceless figure created through online forums and stories. The Slender Man egregore has gained a significant following and has even been linked to real-life crimes. Overall, egregores have a long history in culture and continue to play a role in literature, media, and popular myths and urban legends.
That's right. Wasn't there girls that killed some chick and said it was over the Slender Man?
Yes.
Something to do with that. Or they used the Slender Man as the reason to bring him out. Oh, the Slender Man was telling them? I don't know.
Yes. And so that was someone who was etherically weak, that kind of let them think that that's what they were talking to. And that's another thing I'm getting at. You do not know what you are conversing with. The more knowledge you have, the better. You can be conversing with all kinds of entities that reside on all the different astral realms. Using your discernment is the most important thing, the most important tool that you have. And that's kind of what a lot of people's problem is like they're not monitoring their thoughts and they're not using their discernment as, what they're actually picking up. So the more you know, the less influence you can be, the more your abilities, the better your abilities will get, and the easier it is to tell what's coming at you and how to deal with it. So that's the whole point, really. Okay, so now I'm going to talk about PK or psychokinetic manifestations. Okay, so a lot of people don't know that they think PK is just one thing. They think it's a poltergeist. That's not really the correct term. Poltergeist means noisy ghost, but they think that it's an actual just entity, like it's just a ghost, but it's not. So psychokinesis or PK, also known as telekinesis, is a purported form of psi, a term in parapsychology to describe phenomena that appear to be beyond the realm of the known physical laws. Proponents of PK describe it as the ability of the mind to directly influence matter through invisible means. It is often considered a form of mind over matter. Examples of alleged psychokinetic phenomena include the movement of objects, the bending of metals, and the influencing the outcome of random events. So according to some accounts, these effects can occur both spontaneously and deliberately, suggesting both conscious and conscious processes may take place. So also, PK manifestations are caused by living agents. They're caused by living people. Traditionally, it can be caused by adults, but mainly through prepubescent teenagers are the culprits for a lot of this. So hormones get involved, a lot of enraged emotion gets involved, when we're starting puberty, we're trying to figure ourselves out, we're full of rage and emotion and all these things, and someone with latent psychic abilities that isn't aware of it can actually create an energetic form. I've actually seen one with my own eyes. That was fairly big. It wasn't big enough to be a huge problem, but left unchecked, it would have gotten pretty bad. It was in a place that I've investigated, that I still investigate, but it's still there. So where I work is I do ghost tours at a haunted house. So it's an actual live attraction haunted house. Everybody goes there, they go in, they get scared. Okay. So here's the perfect storm for why there's a PK there. Really bad part of the neighborhood. There's a lot going on. There are nothing but bars all the way down. I'm right on the Arkansas River, which is water. Okay, holds consciousness, holds spiritual energy. So you have that going on. The building itself, nothing really happened there. It's just an old warehouse for Highland Dairy. So you've got all those people going in there getting scared and putting that out into the environment. You've got the water nearby. You've got a lot of drinking of spirits going on. You've got a bad area where a lot of things are happening. So you have, and also he has about 30 haunted objects in the location as well. He collects haunted objects. So I've got all of that going on. So you get all that stuff together and then you create the perfect storm for a spirit manifestation or a PK manifestation. And latent psychic abilities and one or more people. It only takes one person to do it. And I've seen it with my own eyes and worked with it. You can dissipate them over time. This one, it was a beginner level. It was pretty big though. They appear as the way I perceived it with my abilities was a black blob that morphed. And it would actually morph into the shapes of people, and it would set the cameras off at night, and it would actually map it as a human form. So it looked like just a black human form, but I've seen it huge, and I've seen it jump through the rafters, which is pretty intense. So, it scared a lot of people I took through there, but I knew what it was, and I knew it wasn't that dangerous. So, because it's just barely forming. But it could mimic It can mimic people's voices. I've had that happen a lot. I've had it mimic my name in someone else's voice that I know. So it can mimic human behavior. It can mimic human emotion, but it doesn't have any human emotion itself. It's just a thought form. It's just energy. So it's emotional energy that has built up. It acts as its own entity, but it does not act human-like at all. It doesn't have any sympathy or empathy or anything like that. So sorry I got sidetracked there for a minute, but that's basically what a PK manifestation is. Okay, so let me see where I got lost here. All right. Okay, so next slide. So many forms. So claims of phenomena resembling psychokinesis have been documented throughout history and across various cultures. These accounts often include levitation, which is objects or people seemingly floating against gravity, miraculous healings, object movement, luminocytes, so the appearance of lights or glows often around individuals or objects. So I've seen this too in the haunted house. I see green glowing lights that look like dripping water that come down that will hover above. I've actually got it on camera a couple times and I've been able to see it. So this does happen. You just have something that self-illuminates. And the color of it fascinated me because I usually see it in a gold or blue or whitish color, but this one was like bright neon green, the one that this one created, which was pretty interesting. Then you have apporting, which is just, and this was really popular in the spiritualism movement between the 1840s and the 1920s. So apporting is when a spirit or entity will take something from one location, pull it into their dimension, and then drop it back into your dimension in another area. So like your keys go missing and you find them on the bed, you left them on the table. Like that's what apporting is. Other physical phenomena attributed to religious figures, shamans, and adepts of magic. So they're able to create these types of entities, religious figures, shamans, any kind of adepts. If you're practicing magic, you can create these types of things as well. So such claims have appeared in religious texts, including the Bible. For example, the New Testament book of Acts recounts the story of St. Paul and Silas, who, while imprisoned, were freed when their shackles fell off and the prison doors opened, attributed to divine intervention. This event is sometimes cited as a possible example of psychokinesis or paranormal activity. It is also hypothesized that practices such as magic spells, curses, and rituals aimed at controlling the weather might involve psychokinesis. Even the use of the evil eye, thought to cause harm through direct thoughts or gaze, has been placed with this classification of some proponents. Okay, so research. Other reported manifestations of psychokinesis include the activity of a poltergeist. These are often associated with unexplained sounds, moving objects, and breakage, frequently reported in homes and areas that have children or adolescents. Some theories suggest that the phenomena stem from repressed emotional trauma or hostility, while others argue for a paranormal origin. Additionally, some individuals report experiencing PK phenomena during periods of death, danger, and emotional crisis, such as clocks stopping or pictures falling. These incidents are seen by some as evidence that strong emotions can trigger psychokinetic events. I've seen things like this with my own eyes. Current research in the field often explores the role of meditation in altered states of consciousness, seeking to establish whether such mental states may increase the likelihood of a psychokinetic effect. Some studies are also exploring the possibility of retroactive PK, where an individual attempts to influence a past event through mental intention. I've worked on this myself to a small degree, going back to my past self to affect future events. This is really common in ceremonial magic. These experiments involve having objects attempt to influence an event, such a series of numbers that have already been generated by a random generator. However, even if the positive results are achieved, critics point out the difficulty of determining if the influence was genuine or some other factors were at play. Okay, so Then I just want to talk about this point. So a lot of people will have paranormal experiences and they think they're seeing ghosts. You may be seeing someone that is astral traveling in the realm that you're in. Okay, so if somebody has a spontaneous out-of-body experience or someone is astral traveling, you can actually come in contact with them and think that they are apparitions or paranormal phenomena. These type of things also happen in parasomnia. Parasomnia is sleep paralysis, night terrors, sleep talking, and sleepwalking. And also lucid dreaming can cause this type of activity as well. So I just want to kind of like wrap that up and basically say this. Not everything that you see is what you think it is. More than likely, it is something going on that you have no idea is going on. And so once you learn discernment and you learn the difference between these two different things, as you become more adept, on your spiritual path, and you start to manipulate energy and read energy, then you can start to differentiate actually what you're experiencing.
No, I would have to say after certain experiences that I had, again, that goes back to why I even question poltergeists, because I could, just the experience with blowing the candle out. I mean, that would have been enough for someone to think they had a poltergeist in their house if they didn't think that they did that.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, you got to wonder, like, could people, I do think it's possible that people may actually be experiencing poltergeist effects and it's actually being created and done by them.
Yes,
And they
especially,
have no idea.
Right, because a lot of people, that aren't on a spiritual path and aren't aware of all this stuff, their lives are usually crazy, and all they know is their environment and operating from the ego and all these things, and then they'll have all this crazy shit happen to them because of their lifestyle choices, and then they start, how many people have called me and been like, I'm having a lot of paranormal activity in my house, and I go out to check it out, and I'm like, bro, it's you. Like, it's your lifestyle. You are bringing this stuff in. You are creating these things. You are drawing this stuff to you because of the, where you're vibrating at. It's and it's just plain ignorance. It's not understanding. And I'm not trying to, talk shit. It's just people don't know about all of these things. And so they think it's always something on the outside of them, when a lot of it can be coming from their own behaviors and actions themselves. One more thing I might add that me and Nick were talking about before we started recording was that when we lose someone and we're grieving for them, and I know how hard that is, but if we are not able to let them go, we can actually hold them here as earthbound spirits in our realm. So it's very important to work through that grief in a healthy way and to be able to let them go, because you're actually keeping them here and you're keeping them earthbound because they feel like, they have unfinished business or they don't want to leave you for whatever reason. And then there's spirits that just flat out don't want to go because they think they're going to go to hell, and they stay here. And the longer they stay here, the more corrupted they get, the more negative they get. They don't ascend, and then they're here for hundreds of years. And then that's when you get really evil, nasty things that they turn into over time.
I agree with that.
So,
I find it interesting to give some, I guess, maybe idea where you're coming from with this. In that Dion Fortune book, going by what she was saying in that book with some of the people that she came across that she treated, she even said that one person that, her husband had passed away, and he actually really wasn't like the best of people, really the nicest of guys.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But, she like basically like, immortalized him and idolized him after his death and had a shrine for the guy. And she eventually started ending up with the same exact health issues that guy had before he died.
Yeah, because he merged with her energetic field because she kept him there. She kept him alive. Yeah, that can actually happen. When ghosts don't move on, they don't understand the same things we do, and they try to live through us. They can actually start merging with you, and that's another thing And they could basically not like possess you, but they could start merging with your subtle body, your energetic body, to the point where you start taking on. And this is where empathy comes in. The ability of empathy, being an empath, comes in. You can actually merge with their energy. And if you're around dead energy long enough, that's why I always take breaks between paranormal investigations. Because if you're around that, it can actually make you sick. Psychic mediums live way, way less than we do. Like normal people that don't constantly commune with the dead and have them work through them. It's notoriously known in the paranormal world that if you're a psychic medium, you're going to live a hell of a lot less years than you would a normal person who wasn't working with the dead. So being around that dead energy is really detrimental to your subtle body, and it's not good. So I had to learn things to protect my aura and my practice and everything to prevent that from happening. Because when you go on an investigation and you're around that energy, even for 4, 6, 8 hours, by the time you're done, you're completely exhausted. Well, where do you think they got the energy from? It wasn't just your batteries to be able to manifest and interact with you. They're actually pulling from holes in your aura. So learning how to protect yourself through meditation, energy work, breath work, all of these things is what's going to keep you protected from being susceptible for any of that kind of activity, and just from regular people, physical people in general too. Okay, that goes for them too, right? You're around negative energy all the time, that's what you're going to get. You are the company that you keep. And so just be very mindful of that,
Yes. Trying to think of other things that we were talking about prior to the show. I think there was a few other things that I mentioned that I did want to bring up. Oh, one thing I think I noticed, did you mention her Kabbalah book?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. For some reason, I didn't think you mentioned that in her books, and I was like, I think that's one of the most important ones.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a great book.
Yeah, that one is the only one of hers that I've actually read. I've done more research about her online and reading that book. Like I said, I have like tons and tons of books, and sometimes some of them just get shelved and I forget about them and get distracted. But that one was really pivotal for me, and I needed to read that at the right time. It's funny how, sometimes when you're on this path, things will just appear when you need them to. And I had that experience that I didn't understand, and it had a really profound effect on me. And then lo and behold, I just decided to go and pick up that book. Like out of nowhere, I was just laying there in bed one night. I was like, oh my God, I need to read that book for some reason. And I read it, and then I completely understood what was happening to me at the time. And so it really helped me. So just, things like that will happen. When you go down this path and you start learning and you start, connecting with the divine more, the answers will come. You just have to be patient enough and aware enough. And so that's how that book came across, for me. It was like, I was like, oh, okay, now I understand. Now it seems like I need to kind of beef up a little bit more of what I'm doing and try to figure out how to protect myself more because of the nature of my work. I work with people all the time that are coming to me with all kinds of problems, and, I do investigations and all kinds of stuff. So it's like, us healers and mentors and teachers and magicians, we need to be really careful because we are completely opening ourselves up to realms unseen on higher levels in all planes. And you got to be careful because you might grab some hitchhikers on the way home, or stragglers is what I call them. I get stragglers all the time that will just come in and out. I see them one time and they leave. They kind of just get attracted to what's going on, and they want to, like, you're like a light in the dark to them. So they're just attracted to that. And you can get all sorts of problems can arise from leaving yourself opened up like that.
Yeah, I was even reading in that, I found this interesting. And again, like, I even think this is a possibility. In that Dion Fortune book, she was kind of talking about, like, somebody who was, like, speaking somewhere. And it's like, I forgot, like, what they were doing. It was like what they were speaking there or doing there really wasn't what was normally being done there. And I think, like what she was getting at is that, like, normally who would be behind the podium has probably gone through, like, some fucked up shit and they're talking about it. And like how this other lady who was a student and was just doing something else in that room, like got up in front of, like by the podium, and normally never has a problem public speaking, doing anything, just all of a sudden felt this feeling come over her that like she couldn't do anything. Mm-hmm. You know, and they, you know, Dion was going on like, you know, who's to say that shit just from like every other person that's been there hasn't like left shit, or it's just like.
Yes. I mean, everybody knows that. Like when you walk into a room, you can tell when some shit's popped off in there. Like that's how my abilities work. When I read places, I can walk into any place and I get a feel for like what's going on in there automatically. It's like a residue. It's, you know, and you never know what somebody has done where. Like you can just walk into a place or walk near somebody and you're like, whoa, like that's, you know, and you can just tell. It's like the vibe that they put off, and you can tell what's going on, but you never really know how deep the rabbit hole goes with what really went on there. So, you know, you got to be extra careful when you're, you know, in your travels doing these things, going to different places, hanging out with different people. And that's why I hate going to concerts nowadays. You know, because it's like there's so many people and you're absorbing all of their shit all at once. It can be a beautiful experience, but it can also be a draining experience. You know, we've all been there where we've been in crowds of large people. You know,
Yes.
You're absorbing all of that. You're around that, and if you don't have the correct energetic protections, then you know you'll suffer the consequences. I learned the hard way for years and years and years.
Yeah, no, I can even say that, like, from some of the shows I went to recently. I could even say, like, you could definitely... I mean, I guess luckily, the type of person I am, I wasn't going to fall into, I guess, the magic going on there, but you definitely feel like some sort of energy going on depending on who's moving the people.
Yeah. And there's, you know, to wrap this up and say, like, there's so much going on. There's occult symbolism everywhere. There's things going on all the time, everywhere you look, every place you go. The more cognizant and aware you are of what's going on with the people and the places and the things, the better off you're going to be, you know, and be less susceptible to all of these things. Like it's everywhere. I think it's so funny. Like I always think about all the time, just driving around looking, I see symbolism everywhere. It's everywhere. It is so ingrained in our society. I don't think people have any clue like what's really going on. And so the key to that, awareness. Just be aware. Just be aware of what's going on around you. Be aware of the people around you. Be aware of, you know, what went on where and who you're hanging out with and all of those different things. You know, things are crazy these days. Things are like amplified times 100 than they used to be even 10, 15, 20 years ago, man. Even when we were kids in the 90s, like, you know, things are way, way different now than they used to be. And it just blows my mind. And, you know, I don't even want to go down other rabbit holes of Watchers and Archons and all, and all of that stuff too. That's another thing that's going on. But yeah, I've got tons of stuff, you guys, on my channel about, you know, different types of paranormal entities, the unified paranormal theory with John Keel, and explain to you like where these entities reside, where they come from, the invisible light spectrum, like different astral planes, all that type of stuff. To all you newbies around that don't know my work and stuff. If you're interested in learning more about this stuff, I have tons of stuff on my channel. You can check it out.
Thank you. Something I did want to get into, we'll talk about just for a little bit before we wrap it up.
Mm-hmm.
What is your opinion on like when people do psychic attacks? What do you think that's like? Is there like certain, God, I don't know how to explain this, certain typical things that someone would do if it's a psychic attack? Like, what do you think? Like, when somebody, if you wanted a psychic attack me or somebody else, like, what would kind of be the outcome? Or what do you think? How does that work? You know what I'm saying?
So for them or the receiver?
I guess, yeah, for the receiver. Like, how does that work on them? Or what happens to them?
What it feels like is you start having abnormal thoughts that are not your own. You will start to do things that you normally wouldn't do. Subconscious memories will start popping up in your head. You will start experiencing paranormal activity in your environment. Things will start to go wrong in ways that you're like, what the hell? Where the fuck did that come from? On their end, that they're doing it, there's an energetic sacrifice that has to be made on their end when they're sending it to you. Now, sooner or later, it'll come back around to them. Now, if somebody realizes what they're doing and send it back, it'll be sooner rather than later. But because karma will catch up with them. There's always a price to pay to any kind of energetic work you do, one way or the other. But generally, when you are the victim and you're feeling it, that's typically how you feel. You will feel ill. The biggest number one thing that happens is headaches. So you will feel a splitting headache. You'll be sensitive to light, sound. You'll have emotions rise up in you for no apparent reason. It's basically an attack on your subconscious mind that starts pulling things forward. Physical symptoms, chills, body aches, flu-like symptoms, not being able to sleep is a huge one, is a really, really big one. Not being able to sleep, and then when you do sleep, you have nightmares.
I could see that. Yeah, the sleeping nightmare.
Yeah. It's basically meant to weaken you to the state where they can really let go. And generally, it's them sending... So a psychic attack, it's them getting in your head, but it can go even further than that. It's them actually sending something after you. It's sending a low-level demon after you if one's even willing to work with them. It's not going to be something higher level. They wouldn't fuck around. They're not going to come up from the 7th plane below to mess with you, but... It's going to be something low level that's willing to work for peanuts. That's something, You
think it's like even something that just plays on somebody's own fears and shit too?
Oh, God, yes. That's exactly what it does. It works through your subconscious and your emotions, weakens your physical state so that your mental and emotional state becomes weakened. And then that's when it fully attaches. And there's things that you can do to kind of, push it back. When it happened to me, I stopped it immediately because I realized what was going on. But that's just being aware is the biggest thing. That's why I keep stressing awareness of what's going on. But yeah, they'll usually try to, most people are pussies, so they will try to conjure something to send to you as opposed to them actually trying to do it themselves. I'm sorry.
It just surprised me coming out of your mouth. I thought that was funny. I mean, not that you curse anyway, but just.
I don't. I mean, I don't. No, I don't. Like, there's no need for me to do that. Like, yeah. I'm strong enough on a mental, emotional, and energetic level to not let that kind of stuff get to me. But
have you ever thought of like psychic attacks, kind of like pushing somebody out there to an extent? Like pushing them on, like almost like kind of pushing them to having a magical experience, or kind of pushing them out to the abyss.
Yes, if it can be done in a positive manner too. Like gurus and divine avatars will do this for their students as well. Yes, absolutely. So, but the other person, for something like that to happen, the other person has to be subconsciously willing for it to happen, or it has to be like the right storm, like the right time for it. And they have to be able to find a way in. This is going to sound really complicated. It's like they have to find a weak point in, and it takes some time. But yes, if they do have like it's the same thing as praying for someone, like the power of prayer, praying for healing, or praying for this or praying for that. You can pray for someone's ascension. It may take a while, but it can happen. And I've, in my studies, I've come across this where gurus or divine avatars that are teaching their students will force them into spiritual ascension through these really powerful experiences, through what you would call a psychic attack. Yes, it's very possible.
I've kind of thought that that's a possibility.
Yeah.
Because I think like
Yeah,
that,
it is.
I mean, I hate to sound like an ass, but I was like, if that kind of was be the only thing that would make it worth, like, why even do a psychic attack unless you were going to do that? That sound like a dick. But you might as well
Right.
take it that far because you probably could drive the person to the brink of insanity.
Yeah, you could.
You push them so far out there, they'll open up their eyes and they'll forget who the fuck they are.
Yeah, and I wouldn't doubt that that's
So it's
happened
like,
to some people.
why not?
That's why it's good to keep your mind strong.
No, so now, like, if
Yeah.
so, like a magician doing that to another magician, I would assume that it may not be that easy then.
They would have to allow it, and it would depend on what level they were at.
Like, if you were a very balanced person.
If you have a neophyte going against an adept or a master, that's a different story.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah.
Right, so it just depends on what level they're at and how much
Well, I'll put it this
access
way:
they allow.
if both of them have had experience with magic or actually crossing the abyss, I would think it may not be that easy between both of them to do something.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And if they cross the abyss, why would they want to?
Well, I mean, to be totally honest with you,
But-
that's one of the reasons why I had wondered if that was if you could do that as a psychic attack, because just from my own experience, if you did that to somebody without them knowing, I think that would be some that serious torture.
Well, yeah.
And if
it
they
could
don't know
be.
what's going on, like you'd really fuck someone's head up.
Oh yeah, you definitely could.
It'd be like
in
MK
the
Ultraing
books-
somebody.
Yeah. In the book, she talks about her going up against somebody that was way more advanced to her. Her name was Moira. She was like the grand poobah. Like everybody was afraid of her. She was like the
From
best.
Schitt's Creek, Moira.
And she went against her in the astral realm, and she got her ass kicked, but she got back up and went back in there and was able to fend her off. You know. So, but yeah, it's definitely possible.
Yeah, no, I've often have thought that might be a type of a psychic
Yeah, people
attack.
can scramble each other's brains. Yes. Yeah, it's absolutely possible. Somebody that knows what they're doing and knows your weak spots.
Oh, now we're doing the sign of silence. Oh fuck, we're Satanists. Oh my god, you're great. Thank you. I feel like there was more.
I'll be here all week. Don't forget to tip your waitress.
I feel like there was other things that I was thinking about and brought up before the show that are just escaping me now. And it is a very interesting topic when it comes to the paranormal and psychic attacks and just poltergeists. Again, I do think if you've had magical experiences, I do think that changes a person kind of in a sense physically.
It does.
So I do think that after that experience, it could be possible that you could cause one unknowingly or knowingly, to yourself or someone else. Just to me, after having magical, crossing the abyss and having magical experiences, my whole look on the paranormal has completely changed.
Yeah.
Because I was I've created paranormal effects myself.
Yeah. Yes, and I have too. And so, no, I to answer your question, yes, it's absolutely possible. If somebody really wanted to, they could scramble your eggs, if they wanted to. Now, will they suffer the consequences for that? Hell yes, they will. But yeah, somebody could do that if they really wanted to.
No. All right, I think we'll wrap it up there. That was a really interesting talk. And I totally forgot that you were the OG of slides before I even started really using slides. So that was nice. You brought a slideshow and everything. That was awesome.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, no, I forgot
run,
that's
man.
always your gig. Yeah, I totally forgot. She always comes with slides, and that was great. I saw the slides at the bottom, and I was like, oh, this is going to be awesome. So this was a nice surprise show for me, kind of, in a sense. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, everybody in the chat, too. Megan, let everybody know, again, where they can find your stuff, please.
Yeah, so on Instagram, it's the 7 Degrees, just like it is up on the screen, 7 Degrees of Wisdom 81 on my YouTube channel. From there, you can hit up my Instagram, my Facebook.
All right. Awesome. And I think pretty sure I have your link tree in the bottom. If not, I'll add it
my link tree. You can hit up my link tree too if you guys are interested in anything else that I do.
Awesome. And again, thank you very much, Megan. That was a great show. I don't know much about Dion Fortune, to tell you the truth, believe it or not. So I even got to learn a little bit more about her in this. And, again, a very interesting topic. You know, nobody knows really. I mean, nobody has like maybe all the answers, but I just think it was, you know, some decent things just to think about and talk about, because
absolutely.
I don't think the way that these things have been accepted is telling the whole story.
It's not.
So we're going to have to start wondering and theorizing until we find what's really going on, you know?
Yeah. When you think you know some shit, you don't know shit.
Yeah. So I had a really good time doing that with you.
Yeah, me too.
And until the next one, everybody be well. Later.